So indeed, good evening, everyone. And we are taking up these next pages in the blueprint of enlightenment. And we're going from page 82 up to the top of 86 for tonight. So we are in some similar territory as we have been about the nature of practice with the body. And at the bottom of 82, he is saying that Dōgen Zenji did it this way. He read the sutras and he read and he read and he studied and so forth and couldn't find the answer to his great difficult question. And so he found the opportunity to practice with his body and with a teacher who accepted him and understood the dilemma that he was having, and really knew that it was rare to find a student who was going to be as intense as Dōgen Zenji was, and it's rare to find somebody seeking the Dharma in such a way. So we hear the story of Dōgen in this part that we are reading, and then we come back again at the point where Roshi points out that Dōgen realized something. He'd been sitting with his teacher and he stopped interfering with his own mind. He stopped interfering with the thoughts and the angst of not knowing or not understanding. And then finally, he says, at the instant it moved, those things moved out of his mind. Roshi was coming around using Kyosaku, and he hit the student who was sitting right next to Dōgen. And at that moment, Dōgen had a realization. And he said, oh, it's true. We are really realized Buddhas. So I like that moment then where it says Roshi remained silent for a while. So,
Ito-san, could I ask a question about this?
Of course.
So the gentleman is asleep next to him instead of being attentive to his practice. And my understanding is it's not uncommon for the teachers sometimes to use a stick of some sort to hit somebody. I was confused as to what it was in his consciousness that moved, that brought him the enlightenment. Was it the correction by the teacher? Was it, I don't understand why. I mean, to me, it's a little violent, but there's a purpose behind why the teacher does that. Could you help me understand what's going on here?
I'll do my best. So first of all, let me speak to the issue of the Kyosaku. More typically in China, they did not use the Kyosaku. Kyosaku became much more an invention of the Japanese. Typically, there was a bamboo stick, you know, just like the sticks that you get out of Australia, the Aboriginal used, that sound. And so that was in the ear, and so it wakes you up and you become more attentive. But the Kyosaku is not painful. It does not hurt. It causes the muscle to relax and completely wakens somebody up. So it sounds fierce, it sounds horrible, but it is not painful. And so it's a misunderstanding about that. But it's very difficult to say what that was, because it could have been anything that would have caused, that it would have brought about Dōgen's awakening. It just happened to be that. It could be a stone fell off the roof, or it could be a bird sang, or it could be somebody coughed. It could be anything. And we can't say that it was, that something specific would bring that about. It's just that at that moment, Dogen's mind was so taut and so intent and standing on the point of a pin, on the head of a pin, so that anything could have pushed him over into awakening. And so that is the great value of that kind of practice, that deep, focused, intentional, continuing practice that would bring that about. And there's certainly a certain tension in the practice itself. It's hard, it's not easy. And so there would be the tension of that, but then the very tension, the tension that occurs in the mind itself, in which it becomes clear and taut, T-A-U-T, such that something will push it into awakening. And, you know, a teacher like Dogen's teacher would be able to feel that moment in him. And maybe he didn't expect that that would happen at that moment, that what he was doing was that would happen. But nevertheless, he could certainly sense that Dogen was moving in that direction and had released whatever burden he was carrying of the language that he was bringing along. His teacher could see that he was beginning to release himself from that. So,
so it's not like the teacher would have intentionally, he would not have necessarily known that the stick use would bring about the enlightenment, but he sensed something was happening and that just happened to be the thing that did it?
I would say so. I mean, there certainly are teachers who sense in the course of a period of Zazen that a student is very close to, is sitting in deep samadhi. And so the teacher may ring the bell such that, hoping that that bell would awaken the student or would give that student a kensho, allow that student to experience kensho. So it could be intentional on the teacher's part, but it does not appear that that was the case with Ryujing. It doesn't seem so. So, but we certainly have to understand that Dōgen Zenji was, you know, quite a long time in practice with Ryujing when this came about. But if, I should say that when Dōgen did have that awakening, the entire Zendo would know it. Everybody who was around him would know it. Because it is as if a great light gets turned on in the Zendo and everybody feels this radiation. You can't hide it. So everybody feels it. Everybody knows that it has happened. So I was in the Zendo when Inoue Kondo Roshi had a Kensho. And usually they go around with the Kyosaku, but that did not happen. Nobody moved for the entire period. Nothing was done like that. Nobody walked around to correct anybody because the entire Zendo was awakened. Everybody was. You feel it. And then you don't know whether it was you who had it or Inoue Kondo. You don't know who it was. Was it me? You have that feeling because it is so powerful. So it's, so certainly Ryujing would have recognized that this occurred with Dōgen Zenji. So, yeah, and please, anybody, don't hesitate to ask questions at all as we go through this. Yeah.
Ada-san?
Yeah.
In other accounts, Ryujing, same as Tendo Nyojo, right?
Correct.
Okay. also exclaims something, and I think in different accounts it's slightly different, but it usually has something to do with the dropping away of body and mind. So something like Zazen is supposed to be the dropping away of body and mind. What are you sleeping for? And so it was hearing those words that caused the enlightenment. But it's interesting here that it was just the sound of the stick.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, does that matter? Is it disputed between different lineages?
I don't know. I think that there are various myths that come about with these happenings. And so as I understand it, Dōgen, after that experience, went to Ryujing in his chamber, his office, or his room, and that is where the conversation took place. Mind dropped off. Mind dropped. However it went. So body and mind dropped off. But that's how I understand it. That conversation occurred a little bit later, but not in the Zendo itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I doubt that conversation would have occurred in the Zendo. I don't think so. The Chinese Zendos were very strict, and the period of sitting for Dōgen was just extremely hard, extremely long, and I just can't imagine doing it. They only slept for 3 hours a night, and then they would sit, say from 11 o'clock in the night until about 3 in the morning. And then maybe they would have a little bit of warm tea. It was just an impossible schedule that I can't imagine any human being doing myself. That particular schedule is written in another book that I am reading about Dōgen Zenji right now, and I don't have it with me, but it is not human as far as I was concerned. It was an extremely difficult schedule. Now, I will say that it was also a regular thing to sleep for certain periods of Zazen, but to remain in the sitting posture. And there was a apparatus. It's a piece of wood that has a chin rest on it, and it goes straight down to where you hold it. It's a big stick that goes down, and you hold the stick, and then you're sitting in Zazen, holding the stick under your chin, and you can rest your chin and sleep. But you stay in the sleeping position. You stay in the Zazen position. And somebody gave me one, and I just didn't bring it back with me from Japan. I just didn't. But it's a tool that was used in those Zendos in China. So I never saw it used in Japan, although I was given one. I never saw anybody sleep or do anything like that in Japan. So.
And if it's okay, I would like to ask one more logistical question.
Surely.
So the language difference between Dōgen and his Chinese teachers. So did Dōgen know Chinese? Were the languages similar enough?
Yeah, yes, Dōgen was brilliant. And Dōgen, we are talking about a couple of years now. So he was able to use the language well enough that he could understand. And of course, if you can read Japanese, you can read Chinese. Now, there are different meanings that occur, very comical ones sometimes, but they're similar enough that you can understand the meaning in Chinese. You can read well enough, not entirely, but well enough. And Dōgen was a brilliant scholar. So I suspect he had been reading in Chinese. He had been reading Confucian texts and what have you. So he was a skilled logician. So. Yeah.
Well, at that period, Chinese was commonly used in the court. in the Japanese court. And Dōgen came from a courtly family, so of course his education from childhood on would have included the study of the Chinese language.
Right. And of course, you know, Chinese poetry was what was taught in court poetry, and he was skilled in all of that. So, so he was quite a scholar, quite able. So, any other questions about that, about Dōgen or anything at all? No, don't hesitate. Yeah. So then we go down then on the middle of page 84. And Gien Roshi says, until then, he had been looking at this body, he points to his own body, from a certain point of view. But once he became detached from that viewpoint, he could say, I see it's really true. All of you can make it clear by yourself. This really can happen, so please do it earnestly. When you are able to train in the world of delusion, enlightenment is already there. Then for the first time, you will realize that boats and rafts, which lead you to enlightenment, are but yesterday's dream, and will be able to sever forever the old views that bound you to them. So he's talking again always about this question, the viewpoint that Dōgen must have been carrying about himself. You know, Dōgen himself suffered from great arrogance. And so he, you know, was sure, first of all, he was a great scholar. So he was sure that he knew best, that he had all the answers. And he also had come from a great family, so he was also used to a certain amount of care of himself and service and so forth. And so this would have been an incredible experience for him to be giving up, you know, any warmth that he might have experienced, or any of the, you know, the care that money might have brought him. Now, he had been a monk for a long time already, but still he came from a great deal of care. So, and with the sense of arrogance of knowing, I know the answer to this, I know this, it would have been something great that he had to overcome. And so this sense of me and I was very strong in him. I mean, we could say it as ego. We don't use that so much when we talk about Dōgen Zenji, but he had a lot of ego. And so he had to work with that very deeply to allow himself to go past that notion of I and me. And that sitting for long periods with the strong desire to awaken and strong desire to answer his koan would have moved him past that himself. Either he was going to get there past himself, or he was going to die on the cushion. So these boats and rafts that he was using, these cushions that we sit on, are these rafts and these boats that sort of help us along. They sever forever the old views that bind us to them. Somehow that cushion that we sit on by itself, this round jewel that we sit on with nothing else to hold on to. It's just us, and there we are with nothing else. And so we cling to that until we let go, and we let go of our own views as we sit there holding on to nothing. So Roshi points out that when we have this kind of experience, it isn't that there's something new that comes to us. It's that we throw away everything. That's what he says, throw away the viewpoint of me. And then we realize that this true self is here, and that's not new, that we've been sitting with this self all the time. And we weep because it has been there all the time, and our life has gone by and we haven't seen it. We haven't been able to realize this. So, and once again, it isn't that a Roshi comes and liberates you from anything. We liberate ourselves. You free yourself by yourself. And so this is the surest way. It is your own matter. And so you know well whether you are free or not. I mean, we all live with ourselves. You know, we know the truth of what's going on inside. And so we know whether we've been liberated or not. We know very well. And it is because of our own work, because of our own practice, which is not own. When I say own, I don't mean me and I, but the practice that is done by this body, by this mind, this body, this intention to wake up. By that very activity, we are liberated. And so we each have to do that on our own with the help of those around us. And we only realize that also when we wake up, we realize how profoundly grateful we are that somebody had the compassion to sit next to us. So, so it's, that our own family could put up with us all these years is something amazing.
Ito-san.
Yes.
Does Gien Inoue Roshi use does he forego saying the word body? And so we see it in the brackets.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to limit it to the physical body. He wants it to include mind and body, or why is it just the pointing?
No, because he's doing it in person. These are spoken lectures.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's saying, so he's pointing at his own body. So it's this that you do. And so it's put in parentheses in order to let you know that he's pointing at his body.
I guess my question is why he chooses to point and doesn't use language for that moment.
Well, because his body is there and it's obvious. This.
Is that, but we use words. I mean, I just find it interesting, I guess, that is that cultural? I mean,
I think it may be cultural, but I think it's also the way a Zen teacher might teach, because, to say, if I just say, this body of mine is doing such and such. And if I say, this is doing it,
mm-hmm.
there's so much more emphasis and reality in that it's the passion around that I think he helps get that across.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a sorry.
Yeah, even the photographs show his, he's doing this. This is it. This. So yeah, Brian.
There's actually a footnote. The first footnote, very early on page 84, or where did it go? It was not 84. Early on in the book, 62. And in the notes for commentary, it says he often points to his body without saying the word body. He would rather not define what we usually think of as my body. For this reason, you'll often see this word in brackets.
Thank you.
It's helpful or not, but
Yeah, yeah, it's the same as I'm also trying to say, that by saying that, it's this right here. And then as Brian says, it's not me, it's not I, but it's
not
this
mine.
body,
Yeah.
not mine. It's this body that is the appearance of awakening, because we are all awakened. So this body is in the form of awakening. And so this is it. And this is doing the practice. So, yeah, thank you, Brian, for that footnote. Yeah.
I really appreciate this component of these talks, that he does that particular thing, because I think it's very different. I don't feel like I've ever seen it show up before. And it really stands out for me as a distinguishing characteristic of his teaching.
Well, he's certainly, you know, as we are going through the book, we are noticing the degree to which he is telling us that that practice is the body, is the use of the body. And he's a greatly enlightened teacher. And he's also very guttural. And so he, you know, we have seen some of the language that he has already used here that is just, you know, street language, we might call it. No hesitation to do that, because he's real. He's a very real guy. And so I kind of wish that I'd met him, you know, and we will get to meet his, you know, his son, Inoue Roshi. So we'll, you know, we'll certainly get the flavor of him. But maybe Inoue Roshi is very different from his father too. So, but we will get close when we meet with Inoue Roshi on the 18th.
May I say a little bit something about that particular thing in the text? Because we really worked with that. But I've used that too in trying to let go of ownership of the body. And if you do that when you're writing about yourself, if you talk about yourself as this one instead of me and mine, it just brings a whole different kind of understanding to whatever one is saying at that point. So I just wanted to point that out because I like that part of it too. I really think that his pointing to this and emphasizing over and over again that this is what makes enlightenment possible is really important for understanding this text.
Yes. So I would refer then to what we discussed last week and the week before, and the week before that is that eyes see, ears hear, the tongue tastes, and the mind recognizes. And that's what's at work without I or me being present. So, indeed.
Oh, I'm sorry, Inoue-san. So leading up to this, when he would meet with all these different teachers for all those years, feeling so unsatisfied.
Dōgen, you're talking about Dōgen.
Yes, Dōgen, sorry.
No.
So Dōgen was feeling so dissatisfied. It wasn't until he realized that by giving away so much that was giving him what he was searching for, that sense of satisfaction. Yeah.
Yes, the realization of his true self, getting down to the heart of the very kernel of beingness. Yeah. I mean, for many of us, we haven't been on this kind of pilgrimage, as it were, in our lives. But we all can remember just being a student in college, for instance. And we're sort of wandering around from class to class, and we're studying and we're doing it. And then finally we get into some class and there's a teacher who just hits us just right. And there's that feeling that, oh, now I'm beginning to understand. We get that. That happens in life in other courses of study. So we can imagine how that would be for Dōgen Zenji, that this is, he's going around and everybody's saying, oh, you are so brilliant. Oh, you're so wonderful. You're just great. And he's thinking to himself, yeah, but I know what's roiling inside me and I can't come to terms with it. I can't figure it out. So to come to somebody who then says, oh, do you really want to know the answer to your problem? I've been feeling sad lately because there is no one seeking such a thing. So you can imagine his feeling when Tendo Yojo says that to him, and they have this meeting that allows him to begin to trust Tendo Yojo. He's putting his life in, his whole life is on the line now. What would happen if he spends all that time with Tendo Yojo and he doesn't get the answer? So he's going to really throw everything and trust that he's going to get the answer here.
There was something about, does someone point out your shortcomings? I mean, to have someone help you by not just, is somebody actually getting to, that you can trust, who will actually tell you about yourself? That's, so he found something, what he needed.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Ado.
Well, no, but but this is the work that we do in Zen practice. It isn't that it's all solace and happy days. As a matter of fact, if it's real Zen practice, it's hard work. And it's hard work on facing to our own mishaps, our own shortcomings, and our own difficulties. And it's the job of the teacher to stand and face to that, not allow the student to get away with thinking that they are so wonderful. So it's the job of practice to ourselves to be entirely honest in the face of the teacher, so that we attempt as best we can to get past deluding our own selves about just how great we are, and to level out the ego so that we see the operation of the ego in the way in which it is harming us. So it's essential. It's all difficult work, and not a lot of people want to do that. And so teachers can really feel very sad if they don't get a couple of students in their lives who are willing to do that. So Tendo Yojo had been feeling sad lately, because nobody had been coming toward him who was willing to go through that, who wanted to find that kind of answer. So the teacher is practicing with everybody as they are, and then every once in a while there's somebody who is so in earnest and they want that answer. And so Tendo Yojo was deeply appreciating Dōgen for that. And Gien Inoue had some profound teachers. He had Harada Roshi, he had his 4 sons, and Inoue Kondo had a great awakening at age 16. And so Gien, he was, Kondo Roshi was Gien's student. So, Gien Roshi was a profound teacher, and he had some remarkable people come toward him. So he had great responsibility then, as it were, to see that the future, the spark, as we spoke about last week. Do you remember we spoke about last week with Don Johnson, when Buber is speaking about what all these traditions are about and what all the language is about. And all of the language is only to maintain the spark that happened in the first place. And so this is Tendo Nyojo's work then, or Gien Roshi's work, is to make sure that that spark is continued for the future. Because if the spark dies, then there's nothing. The language becomes banal. So,
Inoue-san?
yes.
I just wanted to bring up the use of boats and rafts in the section. So, I mean, usually in Buddhist literature, the boat and the raft is the vehicle to get somebody to the other shore. But then, once that's achieved, you can honor the boat and the raft, but you don't carry it around with you.
Right.
And so his use of boat and raft here seems to apply to practice within delusion, within the world of delusion. So, whereas usually something like, practicing within delusion is seen as something you want to run away from or get away from, but rather it should be honored as something that's necessary, something that is, part of the Buddha Dharma.
Right. Well, it certainly is. I mean, if we're running around thinking that we're all enlightened, well, then that's not quite right either. That's not quite right. We are, but we're not realized. And so, so the boat and the raft and the boat do represent practice in delusion, practice within delusion, which he is saying is very, very necessary. And the boat and the raft lead to enlightenment, as he says, but they're yesterday's dream. We finally let go of them. And we can let go of all the old views and all the old baggage that we've been carrying along, the encumbrances that caused us such heavy weight in the course of our lives. So, indeed, yes. And, maybe the raft and the boat also represent me and I, or certainly, the connection of holding on to something that's going to save me from drowning, the boat and the raft. So they're things that we want to cling to and hold on to, and, not let there be a little hole in the boat that is going to sink. So,
so meaning that, like, the ego, which is something that, like I said before, people want to get away from and transcend, nevertheless is necessary.
yes,
To be able to perceive, not be able to, but to be caught perceiving.
yes, yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, indeed. So Dōgen, at the bottom of 84, he talks about, well, we said that whether you're free or not if you yourself are doing your work. So you free yourself for sure, and then enlightenment is one with training. This means that you will certainly free yourself through the practice of throwing away the self. So we'll already know how to do that. An enlightened action leaves no traces. So there is no dust that will stick to us. We don't even have to carry around the notion of enlightenment or carry around the notion of practice, because we are already doing it. We've already liberated and are doing it. And I like what he says when you awaken. I like the true shape of your mind. That's such a nice expression. The shape, the true shape of your mind. The conventional mind as an idea will completely fall away. So no traces of it will remain. It doesn't mean that you're going to forget anything, that you will forget anything at all, or that you won't recognize your life or the people around you, or that your life won't continue as usual. Of course it will. But this true shape of your mind is something new that will transform and make life more wonderful. And then the conventional mind as an idea will completely fall away. So the feeling that we sort of, wake up in the morning and we know this mind is at work and it's doing things, and we have a sense about who we are because we have this mind and this shape of this mind. And then he's saying that will fall away, Julie, because when the notion of I and me are no longer creating that conventional shape, then there's no need for it. There's no need to hold it in that way. And there's no trace of it. And then he says, at that moment, we truly, truly understand that the body itself, this body, moves by its own principles, not by my directing seeing or directing hearing or any of the other senses. Seeing happens. Seeing just is. Seeing just is. Hearing just is. Later on in the book, he's going to talk about that as eternal, which is going to be very wonderful for you. So the eternal nature of seeing, not my seeing, but seeing is eternal. So we'll get to that later on, but it's very wonderful for that realization. So we hung out a funeral banner last week when we put the ashes, Dick Mendenhall's ashes in, and then the four corners of the funeral banner. And the last one is that nirvana is peaceful and comfortable. So our lives ultimately resolve. But there's also the notion of living nirvana in this time, and we don't have to die for us to realize nirvana and the nature of living in peace and in do I want to say comfort? I guess I do. I can say that. In the comfort of realization, not that one is removed from the suffering of the world, and I don't mean it in that way. I just mean that there is some comfort in the resolution that one has answered one's very difficult question.
So I have a question about this section. And I don't know if I can formulate it, but I'll try. Yeah. So maybe it's a multi-part question. Is there the sentence, when you awaken to the true shape of your
yeah, just a minute, Karen. Anderson
brings
Island
up for me
Yeah, and just a moment, Karen,
To know.
Anderson Island is activating.
Mind. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Can
but
you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
I shut down the video. My family is getting ready to watch soccer, and so the broadband is starting to falter.
Okay.
So the sentence, when you awaken to the true shape of your mind, brings up something to me. And I guess the first is there a pre-realization mind and a post-realization mind? And is that conventional mind, the pre-realization mind, and the true shape of your mind, a post-realization mind?
Yeah, I could go along with that. I could say so. I'd
Okay.
be okay with that. Yeah.
So then the question is, does the post-realization mind, can it conceive of what existed before that? Or does it wipe clean some sense of perception so that the conventional mind isn't even
Functional is what you're going to say. We're losing your last words there. So, so my feeling is that, what would it be like? It's just, I would say that the conventional mind is then not operative in the same way. It isn't that one can't relate to that, but it doesn't succumb to its operation. It doesn't, it's transformed so that it's not, that's the best way I could describe it. It is not entirely erased because one could relate to it, but it doesn't function in that way anymore.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to think of a simile, and if I think of one, I will, as a some way to say that it is like that. I mean, it's sort of, no, I'll think of something, but
Edison?
yeah.
So Dōgen described enlightenment as something like the moon reflected in water, where the water isn't broken.
Yes.
Or the same with the dewdrop, or
Right.
the water is not disturbed and the moon isn't broken.
Right.
And so if you take that and apply it to a post-enlightenment mind, the mind isn't broken. It's not that the old person is disturbed or swept away. It's just that there's something. I mean, you see where I'm going with that? So it's not that the post-enlightenment mind is wiped clean of something that didn't that existed before. It's all still there, but there's just a new brilliance or reflection.
Okay, so it's as if it just is a different color. How about something like that? That it turned a different color, but it is still, the function of the mind, but no longer related from I and me. Because that's an important way of seeing us, an important turning, as it were, such that it is not relating from an I and me standpoint, so that one just doesn't see the world in exactly the same way. It is turned. Yeah, not, as Amir says, that nothing is broken in it at all. It's not like that, but it is just, it is like, climbing a stairs, and you get to the top of the stairs and there you are. So that's not correct either, because it's hard to say this, but simply something has dropped away and it's no longer necessary to you.
I kind of think of it like, decluttering when you have so many things, and if you're really attached to something, oh my gosh, that's suffering to go through giving it away or getting rid of it. But there's a freedom, and you have the memory of the item, of course, but that's the closest I get to.
No, it's very good. Yes, that's very good. Yeah. I mean, we all know that when you go on a long trip, you only have the stuff in your suitcase and you totally forget about everything, all the junk that you have at home and everything. And it's just wonderful. And you almost don't ever want to go back home because all that stuff is there that you didn't throw away before you left. So it's something like that. Something like that. Yeah. So, then he says, you will find there is no illusion to be seen and nothing will disturb you. When you try to observe the true nature of this state, it is like white clouds extending for 10,000 ri, covering the whole sky. This means that no matter how hard you try to see this, it is a world that you will never catch up with. When enlightenment is harmonized with training, means that if you act with an attitude of practice, then you cannot step on even a single particle of dust. So once again, if you act with an attitude of practice, this means there will not be even a smallest particle of disturbance. Well, that's hard to imagine.
I like the next sentence. I think really helps me with that. Is that it's what was it?
When every problem is resolved.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I guess that sentence that there's not the smallest particle of disturbance helped me resolve the previous one. You cannot step on even a single particle of dust. As in sure you're stepping on the dust, but there's no disturbance. That was the way it was.
Sure.
It's the I out of the action. The body knows what to do in the sense.
Right.
There's no disturbance. It's
right.
movement, but it's
Sure.
not disturbing movement.
Right.
That helped me understand the previous sentence.
Right. The smallest particle of disturbance. So the dust is there practicing within delusion, but we aren't disturbed by delusion. How about that?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If I could just briefly, the previously about the pre-realization mind, post-realization mind. Sometimes I think of it or feel it like a pull, like I feel these pulls, like this, like a little monkey pulling me in different directions. And the less I heed or less significant I think of the monkey's pulls, I think the more that I'm just being, as opposed to, hey, let's do this thing over here. Hey, let's do this, let's do that. It's very excitable. And the more I realize that I'm actually standing there and it's pulling me and there's a me here, that kind of helps. And that's a metaphor that helps me sometimes.
Very good. Yeah, that's very good and quite true, quite so. Who's pulling here? What's it about? Because we certainly we have to live and we have to respond to life, but then who is pushing or who is pulling or and it's right to examine that in the I and me. Is it me thinking, oh, I'm going to get something really good out of that, and is that going to pad my ego a bit more? So so that's a good way to just look before we take the next step, to wait.
Hiro-san,
Yes.
I want to mention, because this passage has one that's really caught my attention a lot, that the translation in Takahashi's book, Moon and the Dewdrop,
Yeah.
he translates this section as, if you arouse practice as though climbing the steps of enlightenment, not even a speck of dust will support your feet, and you will be as far from true practice as heaven is from earth. And that's sufficiently, this particular section, you'll see as we go on, Roshi returns to this in response to questioning and goes on for quite a long time. And this rendering in Moon and a Dewdrop is sufficiently different. So I have a very difficult time understanding the relation between what's being said in the Blueprint of Enlightenment and in Moon and Dewdrop in the translation of this particular line.
Yeah. Well, that's why translations are quite dangerous and can be quite dangerous. And understanding who has done a translation and, being able to walk with it. Okay. So I could try and even find yet another translation for you on that particular sentence. I've got it somewhere in my computer. I've got one by Shohaku Okumura. So let me identify that and look that up for you. And
yeah, it's the line here, which is about the dust. After everything looks like clouds for 10,000 ri.
yeah.
The next sentence after that.
Okay, and what does Tanahashi say?
He says, for that section, he says, if you arouse practice as though climbing the steps of enlightenment, not even a speck of dust will support your feet. So the idea is you shouldn't be trying to do it in stages. You're making a mistake by doing this sort of gradual thinking that you're accumulating some virtue or some.
Okay.
But what he says is, if you arouse practice as though climbing the steps of enlightenment, not even a speck of dust will support your feet. You will be as far from true practice as heaven is from earth.
Well, we certainly can agree with that. It's just a different translation, however, nevertheless. Yeah.
May I also make one other comment?
Sure.
In response to this business of having the word body in brackets, and here Jikyo might know better since she was helping construct the book. It strikes me that actually what he's not, the sentence doesn't say this body. That's not the right way to read it. It's as though you could leave that body out entirely. It's this. And the body there is in brackets because it's an extra thing that's not necessary, but is explanatory of what the this is. Since this is more direct and body carries with it a whole baggage of thoughts and associations.
But we are stuck with the appearance of someone. I mean, we appear. So we have this appearance before us. We have all these appearances. And so we are stuck with that, and we have to explain it in some way, or we try to, on some kind of level, so that we can deal with it. So otherwise, we are just looking through one another, and there's nobody there at all, and yet there is somebody there is there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a difficult thing to get across that. at the same time that we are that we are not substantive, we're not substantial, to get that across at the same time that we have a physical appearance, we see one another, and so we are able to recognize this.
Yeah.
And we also take care of this, the body.
Yeah.
It needs care just like everything else needs care.
Yes. So that's a very difficult thing to get across in this kind of teaching. And yet a skilled student will pick that up.
It reminds me, in the last book we read by Harada Roshi, he referred to the body as this thing, always in the book.
Right, right. And this rag, I think he's going to talk about this rag. We say that in some of the sutras that we chant, you know, this rag body, this body, this rag, bag of bones, or all of these ways that we refer to this. So.
Well, in some of the Zen texts, you'll hear them talk about it as the meat body, which really puts, you know, shows the level of, it's not really rejection of the body at all, but it's just keeping it real, keeping in front of you the fact that this is not me. So that meat body always really got me. And saying this for a body kind of resonates with the whole meat body thing too.
Well, I think that you know, saying the meat body thing, I think also is another way of reminding of the temporality of things, and that this meat body is going to be consumed by the insects. So that meat is going to be the food for something else.
And yet, without it, you cannot reach enlightenment. You can't discover the true shape of your mind.
Yeah, this is so. So the appearance is necessary. It has to be here. So, yeah. Okay. All right, let's finish off this paragraph then. Should you be able to do so, that is to step on a single particle of dust, you will be as far removed from enlightenment as heaven is from earth. Even if you tried to step on this, you can't. To that extent, there is clearly not one thing that is disturbing. So from a very absolute standpoint, this is the case. If you return to your true self, you can transcend even the status of the Buddha. If you understand how you really are, then you will no longer need the world of the Buddha. So this is truly to understand beingness as Buddha nature itself, such that we don't have to run around reminding ourselves about Buddhism or Buddha or practice, because we are doing it, we are it. And so no longer the world of the Buddha. This is the teaching of the Buddha, it says. Teaches something certain enough to make the Buddha Dharma unnecessary. And of course, we got this also in Harada Roshi. And, you know, for anybody who would not understand this teaching, that can be a very, very difficult thing to take on, that this is the teaching of the Buddha, that we no longer need the teaching of the Buddha Dharma. It becomes unnecessary. And we can imagine in other religions saying such a thing, it would be blasphemy. It truly would, to say, oh, we don't need Jesus anymore, or we don't need Allah, or, you know, this is blasphemy. So it's so Zen really does tread on the edge of anarchy, you know, religious anarchy in some way. And yet, if one were in that position, it would be that, of course, one wouldn't need that because one was that. One is that. And here he's talking about reliance, to rely on something. Normally, we are made to rely on something. We are made to rely on democracy or some kinds of teachings. However, the Buddhist teaching is not one of reliance. If we understand that the body is endowed with something so certain that there is no need to rely on anything else, this teaching is so wonderful that we cannot help but revere the Buddhas and ancestors. So this point of getting to a point where we rely on emptiness itself, we could say. There is nothing to rely on. So in this way, the body is complete. We are itself, we are the doing itself. And if we can come to a certainty with that, then we don't have to rely on anything else. If we come to that certainty, we also can allow the fact of our death being as simple as he pointed out earlier, that it's just incredibly simple. Don't forget, he starts off this chapter by talking about that impermanence. And so if we work with the body as itself, we live in the eternal functioning of what it is to appear here. And at the same time, we do not need to rely on anything other than that. This takes a lot of sorting with, my friends, and well worth the time to be with that last paragraph, with the ends of that paragraph, this point of rely on what do you rely? This is a question that, you know, a deep spiritual question on what do I rely? What do you rely on? What can we rely on? And when we allow ourselves to function as functioning happens, that the eyes see, ears hear, we don't need much else, because that already is awakening. That already is the Buddha Dharma. And if we can experience that, we can enter a kind of certainty that allows us to be free of needing to rely on false matters, false things. So there it is, there it is. A lot to work with on that very last paragraph, my friends. I mean, just imagine that kind of liberation. The body just functions freely and without unreasonable attachments. So we can be liberated from the need to satisfy this I and the pain of satisfying the ego and the me, is to be free of that. So any other questions, my friends? A lot we take up. You are so good. You are all so good. Oh my goodness, you're so wonderful to be with these questions, to be with these readings.
Ito-san,
Yes.
I do have a question. This is
Yeah.
Karen from the non-video land.
Yeah.
Would you say that last sentence, that it's kind of surrender?
That last sentence is,
Would you say that that description is a kind of surrender?
yeah. No, certainly, I certainly could say that. Yeah. You know, that word surrender isn't used so often in America because Americans just do not like that word. But it is. It's a surrendering, a true. We say letting go, of course, but a surrender to the function of the body as it is, without, you know, without me interfering with it or in making it happen. Once again, close your eyes, then open them, and seeing occurs. I didn't do anything. Seeing happens. You speak, hearing happens. So it's only when I step in because I am interpreting what you say, or I am judging or evaluating, and then hearing, then of course problems come as soon as that happens, or as soon as my eyes look on something and I'm dissatisfied with how something looks, then I am in the picture. But before that, seeing just is seeing. So surrender is a good word to that, to surrender to the body. You know, for this week, you know, try and practice with that. Just one little thing with the eyes, allowing the eyes to see without I doing the work of it. The eyes just see. And you know, you can look around the room and look at different things and realize that the eyes are just doing that. I'm not settling in on anything. Just the eyes are seeing. And allow yourself to, and allow that to be realized. Just look at a whole bunch of things. And I'm not making my eyes see. It's incredibly liberating. So just only takes a second. So okay, so next time we'll go from page 86, and I think we're going to go all the way through these questions and answers to 96. It's just 10 pages, but it's questions and answers that that his students take up with him about pretty much the chapter that we've just read. It'll be like a little bit of review of that. So 86 to 96. And that's good, because then we'll have one more week after that, and then we'll have finished this chapter, and then when Kondo Roshi comes, we should be, you know, that's enough seasoning Because we can ask him to speak to this, to Gakudō Yōjinshū. I think that that's the best topic for him to take up in his talk with us. So. All right, my friends, anything else?
I just want to say thank you to everyone and to Amir, who has dropped off.
Yeah.
I appreciate it also.
Yeah. All right, well, take care of yourselves out there, but beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed, I vow to become it. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Do take very good care of yourselves. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah. Good night,
Yes.
everyone.
A little extra chocolate, maybe, or something.
Ah, yes, yes.
And you too, Edo-san.
Thank you. I will do my
Good
best.
night, everyone. Take
All right.
care.
Good
All
night.
right, thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Night.
Well, thank you.